Well, can't really believe I'm actually doing a video on YouTube. And hopefully the president will see this, because everything I've tried as a parent with a child who has mental illness, every doctor, every ER doctor, every psych doctor, every nurse, every rehab, the insanity of the mental system that just is a complete failure. You know, President Trump is saying he's going to make all these changes, but I guess my question would be, are you hiring a bunch of suits to come in that don't know? Or a bunch of doctors who studied it but haven't lived through a child or a parent or someone that has mental illness, that has no clue what really needs to be done? I mean, it'd be really nice if the president would take parents like me. My son was born with medical problems that have to do with the brain, and he also has mental problems and abuse. So he's actually been in the mental system since the age of 6 years old. He is 22. Let us parents tell the president what's broken, what doesn't work, the insanity of the mental system, the joke and a failure, and that now my son is over 18. I can hardly find out anything about him. He has been in the hospital 125, 140 times, I don't know, maybe more, between ERs, in the hospital on 5150s, 5250s, in the mental hospital, in rehab, now in jail. He's diagnosed with a medical condition that has to do with the brain. So it causes a lot of problems. And then mentally, it would be ADHD, bipolar, sensory disorder, schizoaffective mood component, PTSD. But I do believe at this point now, maybe he's been diagnosed wrong, and I think it's really DID. I think it's multiple personality disorder. I have numerous reasons for believing that I'm completely right on this. I have a book, an absolute book of pages and pages and pages of my son being in and out of the hospital, rehabs, medical problems, mental problems. I mean, and I take it with me every time he's in. They don't care. They don't want to see it. They don't want to fix him. All they want to do is put him in for a couple days and put him back out on the street. He unfortunately cannot live with me anymore because he tried to push me down stairs. He pulled a butcher knife on me. The spirit girl that lives inside of him wants me as a satanic sacrifice. The one personality, I call him Eagle Smeagol because the voice is just spooky. When he was in the hospital, he could not remember his name, so he actually went in under a complete different name, so it was hard to find him. But even though he was on a 5150 and he was being monitored and somebody listening, when the nurse walked by, he said in the Evil Smeagol voice that he was going to rip out her third eye, rip out her other two eyes, rip out her throat, and he didn't know if he was ever going to put her back together again. Well, they let him out of the hospital the very next day. Also, he was also in there for medical reasons. The muscles were pulling away from all of his organs, and they let him back out on the street. You think he's going to be able to go to Walgreens, pick up a prescription, and take it? No, that's insanity. To let somebody out that threatened to kill a nurse and let him out the very next day is insanity. For a hospital to know that he they didn't know until I got there. And then when we realized he registered underneath a different name, it took, I would say, hours before they would even change it. And I kept trying to tell him, you don't even understand what you have on your hands. And he's allergic to a lot of different medications. So it took hours and hours. First, it took an hour just to even find him, even though the phone number he called me from was from their hospital, and they kept telling me he wasn't there. He ended up in jail, and he couldn't do the first 4 or 5 court dates because he was talking in another language, which is one of the other personalities that have been around for, I don't know, 6, 7 years. The other one, he thought that everybody there were robots and they were filling him full of electricity. The other one, he couldn't do anything but rock him back and forth and could barely use his tongue. And this is with days and days. He ended up in the hospital from jail for about 9 days under a 5150. And he was tried in mental health court with all these problems, even though he's been in the mental system since the age of 6. He has been on psych meds since the age of 6. He has been in mental hospitals, and now he's in mental health court in the mental health section of the jail on psych meds, and they found him competent. Not really sure how that worked. When he was released at like 2 o'clock in the morning to go out on the street with nothing. But the court found him competent. And he called me crying, saying he did not want to be out on the street and he did not want to go back on drugs, and he was really scared. So since the court, I knew he was on psych meds, and since the court found him competent, I decided to drive there and pick him up and bring him to the house where I live. I moved, so he did not know where I lived because he tried to kill me. So he's doing very well. He seems to be stable. He's on psych meds. Everything's fine. I bring him home. I go upstairs to listen to all these people talking and thinking, oh my gosh, he had like 4 people. I could tell with him, there were 4 other people. Different voices, different personalities, different everything. And I was really angry thinking, who did he bring to my house? So I go downstairs and realize that it's my son. It's all the different personalities that have been around for years and years, all talking to each other, all laughing with each other. And then I realized he's not stable and he's not competent. And the court system, again, surprise, failure. So I ended up taking him to a place where he was supposed to go into a stabilization. And of course, he didn't stay. But here's the thing. With the different personalities that have been around for years, my son wants the help. My son wants to get better. My son is amazing and sweet and smart. The evil Smeagol that always talks about ripping out somebody's third eye or satanic sacrifices or killing people or violent, it's always there. Then you have this one that talks in a completely different language and does a weird hand movement and will do that for 9 or 10 hours and will not be able to communicate with anybody at all. There's the other one that is like a little boy version of him. There's the spirit girl that lives inside of him that says she is satanic. And then you've got this cholo sounding, I don't even know person. So my son is now in a mental hospital. He's been there for about 4 days. And he is going through severe withdrawals from heroin. And he is emotionally not good. And I talked to him this morning and he's crying and he's throwing up and he's mentally just not stable. And they're letting him out tomorrow. They're letting him out on the street tomorrow. So what's going to happen is he's been on psych meds for a couple of days and off heroin, and he's going to have to go do heroin so he feels better because he's not being stabilized. So when he does that, he's going to go on a binge. And he'll binge on probably heroin and meth. So with all these mental problems that my son has, and then mixing those two, you have a very dangerous person on your hands. So when I talked to the nurse at the hospital, they call it a rehabilitation hospital, which you can't do anything in 4 days, says, well, maybe he does need to hurt somebody or kill somebody so he can go to jail long term. Wow. Okay, so this child that was born with a neurofibromatosis, which has to do with the brain, which already has problems against him, that has had a brain hemorrhage because his dad decided to throw him and he ended up transferred by ambulance to Loma Linda with a brain hemorrhage, that his dad, when he was 2, picked him up and threw him across 2 beds in a hotel and he hit the wall and slid down, who's been kicked, choked, this kid who has been severely abused, and has all these medical and mental problems. And I have a list of them and all the hospitalizations, and I go to these hospitals and I'm trying to get the state to take away his rights to put him in a long-term sanitarium so he could get the counseling, so he could heal, so he could be just my son again and maybe have a chance of a real normal life. And I was told by the psych doctor that I was a horrible mother for wanting my son in a mental sanitarium. But he can't eat. He feels like demons come out of his food. He feels like sometimes that he's on fire, he is malnutritioned, he's unhealthy, he's unstable, he's dangerous, he is on the street, walking around. Well, he will be as of tomorrow again. He had numerous cases against him when he went to jail. Well, one kind of, he ran into a store and stole underwear because he had been homeless. The other is he was out of his mind and could not think, and he broke somebody's nose. He's hurt a nurse, so he's dangerous. At the mental hospital, he was in the mental hospital. Well, 1 month in the regular hospital under 5150s and 5250s. And then now he goes to the mental hospital and he's there for 1 month. And the last 4 or 5 days, he re-broke his hand again. He was in a fight over and over, which clearly states that he is a danger to others. And they let him out. They let him out. So he could be walking next to one of you guys. I've emailed the president, Sean Hannity, Judge Jeanine. I've talked to every psych doctor. I've advocates, mental health people. I mean, everything. So my son doesn't hurt anybody. So my son can heal and have a real life. So everybody's safe. My son, myself, other people. And the system doesn't work. The system is a complete failure and a joke. And the president says, well, he's going to make changes. But what kind of changes? Is he just going to hire a bunch of suits to have another 9 other numbers for you guys to call to find out that they all just rotate you round and round and round and nobody really does anything? Is he going to hire a bunch of people, make a bunch of other jobs, and then when the money really kind of trickles down, there's nothing left for the people that are sick? So there's going to be no changes made. And if you live in Riverside County in California, you're told over and over, well, it's just you're in Riverside County and Riverside County is the worst. I'm sorry. That's unacceptable. I'm sorry. That does not work. Because when my son does hurt somebody because he's not mentally stable, whose fault is it? Is it the psych doctor that walks in for less than 5 minutes and says, oh, he's competent? When I call the psych doctor who's going to evaluate him to see if we can get him in a mental hospital and he won't return my call? To the public defenders that I take in a book on my son showing how mentally sick he is and they find him competent? To the doctors at the hospital that he spits on them, he breaks a wall, he re-breaks his hand, that you're going to let him out? You're going to let him out to walk the street because he has nowhere to go because his mother's too afraid to let him in the house? I'm sorry. There's something really wrong here. And you know what? I know my son is also a drug addict, but there is a story behind this drug addiction. And if he could get counseling and he could get the help he truly, truly needs, and he does deserve, because he was born with problems. And then my ex abused him and we had restraining orders and it was horrible. At what point is somebody going to be liable? I mean, you even see the school shootings. There's stuff on their Facebook. They always just tell you the same thing. Well, until they do something, we can't do anything. Really? That's just pure crap. It's just insanity at its best. And to keep doing the same things with my son, putting him in and out, in and out, in and out, and doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is just ludicrous. So I'm sure the president won't get this. And if he does, I'm sure I won't get a call. But get a bunch of parents together where their child has been in the system for years and years and let us tell you what's wrong with the system. Let us tell you what needs to be done and let us tell you how broken things are. And maybe we could change things because the drug addicted kids are getting way worse. The mental health is getting way worse. The homeless is getting worse. And guess what? Maybe it's just supposed to be that way. Because if it isn't, then why are they not making changes that work? People on the street don't want to be on the street. Well, maybe some, but for the most part, no. And if you ever talk to these people and you find out what horrific or horrible thing happened to them or military or anything else, you begin to understand that these people need mental health. They need to be rehabilitated. And you cannot rehabilitate somebody in 3 days, a month. I don't even think, like even in jail, he was in jail for 6 months. for 6 months. I begged for mental health for him. I begged for mental health for him for that 6 months. He was off drugs. He was on psych meds, but he wasn't getting the mental health he needed to go back out into the world and actually make it. So, of course, he didn't. He lasted, well, not very many weeks, and he was back in jail again. But before that, he was in and out of the hospital over and over. And, since my son doesn't have a job and he's over 18, he has Medi-Cal. So taxpayers are really paying the bill for this. So it does affect everybody. Not only that, my son is amazing. The other personalities that come with him are not. So, Mr. President, if somehow you get this, and you probably won't, but if you do, I would love for you to get a hold of me, because I could really tell you what is wrong. I have years of experience of seeing the failure and failure and failure, but I'm expecting, again, nothing like always. I have emailed you. I have put posts on Twitter. I have tried calling. I have talked to supervisors of hospitals. I have talked to social workers. I have talked to public defenders. I have talked to attorneys. And guess what? The system's a joke. And if you want to hire somebody to really make a difference, hire some parents that know how the system is broke and what the kids actually need, or our loved ones really truly need. So again, sorry for the rant. Please don't be rude on any remarks, because honestly, it's very heartbreaking to watch somebody you love just completely fall apart. And it's very heartbreaking to try to get help, and you've got everybody around you shaking their head going, I can't believe they let him out again. I can't believe he is getting out of the hospital again. Or we'll come visit him at the hospital and walk out crying because of how bad he's doing. And then he's released a couple hours later. So it's very hard on us as families, parents. And my son is a son, a grandson, an uncle, a brother. I mean, he's a person. He's a person, and he deserves to get the right kind of help. And it's just very sad to me that there are how many phone numbers for mental health, but when you really get into it, guess what? They really don't work. They really don't work. So sorry for the rant. If there's any parents going through what I'm going through, I understand your heartbreak and your frustration. And it would be really nice if there were some changes that were really for the good. It's a win-win for everybody. They're spending how much money on all these kids that are in and out of jail and in and out of the hospital. Not even just kids, just people in general. But it's a waste if it's not going to fix anything. It's a complete waste of money. And why aren't they taking the money and actually doing something that will really work? The place my son is at right now, right on the front of the building, it says rehabilitation, which is an absolute joke, considering they told me this is a very short term, get him in, get him out, short term place. You cannot rehabilitate anybody in days. That's just, so I don't even know how they're able to actually put that on the front of their building. And when you ask to talk to a social worker, they're too busy doing intakes, and you can't just come in and ask for one. And the psych doctor, they said, has his own practice. He has his own practice. So he only comes in there for a couple of minutes, and that you're really not supposed to get a hold of him because he has his own practice. Really? Because I'm sure he's getting paid to walk in there to look at my son. And if he doesn't know what my son has been through or anything about my son, he is not going to find my son sick, especially if he has DID, because one of the other personalities will come out and actually look competent, which is so scary. But right now he's throwing up and he's shaking and he's extremely malnutritioned and he's depressed and he can't feel his fingers and he can't feel his hands and he can't stop crying, but they're letting him out tomorrow. So he'll walk out and go find some heroin right away, and then the madness begins all over again. So for you parents that have a loved one, I totally feel for you with all my heart. And for anybody who's in the system, how can you make a difference? How can you make a difference? Because, the oath is you're supposed to try, but I just have not seen that. And my son is 22, and we've been in this since he was 6. So anyways, thanks for listening, and please don't be rude with your comments. It's just really doesn't, I don't need it, to be really perfectly honest with you. It's heartbreaking enough trying to fix my son. So thank you.